so she's into everything.
Yeah, she's walking. She's happy.
Yeah,
It's wonderful. It's more than I imagined.
If we could, let's go ahead and get started. We've got several folks who said they would be here. I think we're still waiting on our one rep from the College of Business and Global Studies, but we're going to go ahead. And just to set a context, this really, this was not my idea. This was really emanated from a discussion following the fall faculty workshop where we had Dr. Jason Overbeat. He's a chemistry professor. He's actually a graduate of UT Martin, come and speak. He currently teaches at the College of Charleston, which is a primarily undergraduate institution, but it has a very robust undergraduate research component to their undergraduate experience. He came and spoke, and he talked about the similarities that he saw between the College of Charleston and UT Martin in terms of size and so forth. We're not exactly Charleston here in terms of cultural attributes, but there are a lot of good things about Martin and West Tennessee. But nevertheless, he did say that part of what attracted him to that teaching position was the size of the institution and so forth, and the collegiality among the faculty members. But he noted that after he got there, a new president came and really had said this undergraduate research is going to be an important component to what College of Charleston is going to offer to the undergraduates. And so he went through a little bit of the storytelling of how that happened and how one of the biggest aha moments for him was learning how different disciplines define undergraduate research, creative endeavors, whatever the discipline may be, and how that was so good for the faculty members to understand the different perspectives and how they go about tenure review and promotion, things that bring accolades to their field, to their programs, that kind of thing, and also how they're judged. And he said they had one philosophy professor on one of the committees, and he said, I'll be glad if if I submit something that is published in 2 or 3 years. There's just not the turnaround that you might have with some of our scientific journals and so forth. But anyway, after that, several people said, oh, we want to continue this dialogue. And so I hope some of those people who aren't here, if they don't make it, that they'll hear it on the video, because I was also asked to record this and put it out on the web, so we'll do that as well. But yeah, so be careful what you say. But the other thing I wanted to share with y'all is I shared with Dr. Ogg that we were doing this, and he was really excited or pleased that we were doing this and said that he looked forward to the conversation as well. So what I'd like to do, I assume y'all know one another, but what I think just to get things going, if y'all would introduce yourselves and how your discipline or college or department defines undergraduate, scholarly endeavors, research, how y'all define that. And then we'll go from there and we'll kind of switch gears if we need to, okay? Paul, would you start, please?
You would ask me to start.
Well, we start together.
I'm Paula Gale, and I'm from the College of Ag, Geosciences, and Natural Resources. And research is all across the board in our discipline, or what we look at as research and creative works. We have the traditional scientific experiment, publication, presentation, but we also have components like park and recreation and ag business who are more of a presentation, public service type aspects. So a little bit maybe of a survey type, user surveys, things, I don't know what you call that kind of research, but not what I would consider, not a soil scientist is like a chemist. They're going to do experiments and things, and so we just run the gamut, I guess is the way to put it.
I'm Michelle Merwin from psychology, and our discipline in psychology is pretty much cut and dried. And basically it's scientific work that results in a publication. With undergraduates, though, they can do research study with other students or with a mentor and take it as a poster to a conference, which many of our students do, whether it's local or regional or national. And many times they go to a national conference on my research, I'll say. It's kind of separate between their research and what's my research. And they can hop on board my research and assist me with it, and then usually end up in a national conference. But ultimately, the goal is to publish it as a journal article. And unlike the other disciplines coming down the pike here, we generally do not do as much book publication. That is one distinction. And pretty much our prestige, if you will, is built through journal scientific investigation. We do some of that community stuff that you were talking about, but not as frequently. And undergraduates in our department are basically involved at every single level of the publication process or presentation process.
I'm David Coffey in the Department of History and Philosophy, representing the discipline of history. Publishing is very much part of what we do. Our research goals are oriented toward peer-reviewed articles and books, peer-reviewed books. Our research is based on critical inquiry, interpretation, very much opposed to the stereotype of historians as mere storytellers. So, in fact, our undergraduate classes, especially the upper division classes, have research components that try to emphasize those tasks, critical examination and interpretation. My colleague, Dr. Howard, will elaborate more, I'm sure.
I'm Carolyn Prashant in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics, and I'm really glad you two have just joined because I'm probably not going to quite get this right. In our department, we're looking for publication in mathematical journals. Work with undergraduates need not always result in new mathematical work. It might be moving an undergraduate towards a graduate level of understanding, and that I believe is good enough for poster presentations at some conferences. That would, of course, result in a journal article. In statistics, the requirements on those publications are, depending on the journal, sometimes they're theoretical and sometimes they can be, I think, remeasurements of data that have already been done previously, and that can count as well. Is there anything I'm leaving out? For what results and for what counts as scholarly activity? I guess that's it.
I'm Nathan Howard from the Department of History, and when we look at undergraduate research, let me speak a little bit about that. Since Dr. Coffey talked more about what our expectations as professors. With the undergraduates, we do try to create a certain skill set in our classes, especially that kind of ability to analyze texts, to look to past interpretations and to assess those. And we try to make the students, try to give them every opportunity to enhance their writing skills, to bring kind of the analytical component and the writing component together so that they can be well-rounded, that they can present their opinions, their conclusions in writing. And I think another level that we also emphasize, maybe less officially, is in our, especially in our larger, our smaller classes, our upper level courses, we do try to facilitate discussion, trying to kind of create an atmosphere where we understand that history is not, like Coffey was saying, simply a storytelling enterprise, but it's a collaborative learning experience where students are going to take their interpretations, discuss these, try to come to some resolution that it is that they are very much involved in this fact-finding enterprise, and hopefully to be able to express themselves verbally as well. I believe those discussions give an opportunity. And then we try to encourage them to go to conferences. We have the Phi Alpha Theta Honor Society, which many of our history majors end up becoming members of this order. And then we have that conference. We have a number of other conferences. When possible, we try to encourage students to do that. And in terms of the writing, I think one forum that this university has done a great job with, and that especially Charles Bradshaw from English and some other colleagues, is the Interdisciplinary Student Writing Conference. And that's one that crosses all the disciplines at our university. And that provides an opportunity for someone, whether they're from math, from agriculture, from business, history, English, whatever, they can present research, and again, original-based research, where they present some interpretation, a thesis that they have developed. And that's the kind of setting, the kind of skill that we want to create in the student, their ability to be able to take their own research skills, to take a text, to draw from it conclusions, and then to be able to present that in a professional setting. Ideally, perhaps, then when they go on to more of a professional level, they can also publish, but if not, they can go ahead and get that first presentation experience here at the undergraduate level.
Louis and Tom, Kate were just introduced to make sure everybody knows one another and talk about your interpretation of teacher, scholar, how your discipline talks about research or scholarship. Go ahead, Kate.
I'm Kate Steffel in chemistry and physics, kind of the traditional lab-based experimental work. One thing that nobody else has hit on that is very distinct in our department is the line between my research and my students' research. There's no line. It's all the same thing. I don't do my own research. My students do research, which is inspired and directed by me. And so in our discipline, that's a very big thing. So I can define my research as the same as theirs. And we typically do a lot of focus on presentations, usually 2 to 3 poster presentations a year a student will give if they're active in undergraduate research. So we really, really push that aspect, and hopefully eventually what they do will lead to a publication, but it's a lot harder to get enough data collected from one student to lead to a publication. It probably takes 5 or 6 that have collaboratively worked on one project to get there.
Do you want to add anything?
I don't think so. I mean, basically, in our upper division classes, we do, in the one I teach regularly, which is the abstract algebra, we usually do expository papers, and the students are required to put together as a group a paper and then present that paper during the last week of the semester to either faculty or a group of other students.
And that's one of the things I was interested in, but you know, attendance makes it hard to get a feel for the whole university. But in other departments, how much effort goes into taking students off campus for presentations, for their presentations, or to listen to others, and then maybe the next year feel like they're adequate, I guess is a good word, enough to participate. That was one of the things I was just kind of interested in, but you know, maybe from others. I know we make a big effort to involve us in off-campus conferences so I was just kind of interested in how others, how that other places.
I think that's, speaking from our department's perspective, that's a big part of what we are, is getting them out and doing things, whether we have the money to take them to just go and observe. Usually we put a stipulation on that they have to be participating in the conference somehow, whether they're a co-author on a poster or my professional society right now is doing this undergraduate scholarship thing, and we've had 2 students actually win that award, which pays all their expenses at a international meeting.
That's great.
We have 2 regional conferences that pay to bring students there. They're undergrad only, one in Memphis, and one alternates between here and Murray State. So every year there are 2 free opportunities. We usually take at least 10 students to both.
In history and philosophy, we will facilitate undergraduate participation if they are conference participants, and we'll usually pay travel and meals, and we certainly encourage it. It's one of the benefits we have, I think, in history is we have on-site conferences that allow our students to participate and to get a hands-on experience, like with the Civil Rights Conference, for example, and a lot of the academic speakers have been history related. So we get to do a lot here. But we also, in history, we have public history, which is museum work or historical site work. And we take students who are into that to historical sites, to museums, get them internship experiences off campus, that sort of thing. So it's important in history, as it is in any discipline, to expose the students to what they'll be doing, and not so a controlled environment.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
In the, I guess in the major societies that are available, is there in either of the disciplines, is there like one that encourages undergraduate participation, or in the sense that in math, ours are, even our national side of society, the 2 big ones are developed to the point that have regional meetings, and so, it makes it easier for us to carry somebody to a regional meeting. So, we anticipate carrying maybe 16 or 17 people, half faculty, half students, just because if maybe on the year, what money is year to year. How many grants do we have? So how much indirect cost money do we have? And, those kind of things. But the opportunity sometimes, if a student is willing to pay part of his way, we can, get him there, get him back, and that kind of, pay for his conference fee, maybe if it was pay his meals or something. So I'm just, but a lot of that is just because the societies, their sales are so developed. So if they're not developed to the point that, that you are stuck going to Seattle every year or California or something, then, you have that opportunity.
I think the neat thing about where we are is we do have a lot of opportunities close by. We have Union, we have SEMO, we have Murray, and even Nashville and Memphis aren't that far, so that we can. And there are a lot of things going on at these places, so there are a number of opportunities for students in all sorts of disciplines. Sometimes we think of ourselves as isolated here, but we're really not that far away. And Murray and Union do a lot. They must have some endowments for that sort of thing. But we certainly encourage that.
I kind of wonder what the other departments do in terms of promoting research and scholarship after UTM. So do you guys have people who come in and do recruiting and do talks on their areas of research? We have a few who come in every year, academic speakers. I didn't know if that was prevalent in other places as well.
These people that are in academia also?
Yes.
Or
Typically in academia, occasionally government or industry. But typically
Colloquial type situation.
We frequently have colloquium availability where we had a professor come in and talk about visual spatial cognitive development in Neanderthal from Murray State last year. And almost every year we bring in somebody that's an academic, usually doing research, which really gets the students excited about doing their research, or maybe even, you know, aspiring to work with that person because they're pretty fascinated with it. But I would say money-wise, we're only able to afford that usually annually. For someone coming from California or Colorado, you know, something like that. But we strive to do it once or twice a year in psychology anyway.
We do colloquium, but we usually feature our own faculty and occasionally feature our own students.
Yeah, we do at the end of the spring. We've begun this, was it 2 years ago, David, that we began for our capstone course, our History 499, we have a colloquium where we take the top student papers and have them present those. And yeah, one thing that I think with most of our, I would say just about all of our history faculty try to do too is to talk about their research in the upper level courses. Again, sharing their own interests so that students in that context, and also I think just in some of the personal meetings, there's a lot of give and take that goes on in the office hours, I think, between students and professors, where professors talk about their own research, how they became interested in their subject, how they proceeded to prepare for graduate school, for teaching, whatever the students are interested in doing. So I think in our department there's a lot more. We don't do so much about bringing in outsiders. We already have the Civil Rights Conference. We have other opportunities for that. But I think most of our students, I think really the bread and butter of understanding about research and the discipline comes from their personal interaction with the professors.
One thing I'll say about undergraduate research, and I've been saying this for 14 years basically, we could not do what we do without them. I mean, there is no way we could collect the data, enter the data, analyze the data, you know, and publish it. And if we did not have them, and it just is a beautiful, mutually reciprocal experience, because they know that they're going to get their name on something. They know they're going to get a letter of recommendation from me that tells them, the university, that they have these skills. But also, I have someone that can assist me, and all of our research assistants take 315 and 18, which is experimental methods 1 and 2. So by the time they're ready to help with research, they've been pretty thoroughly trained. Unfortunately, then they're working with me for a year and then they get leave, which I think is probably the hardest part of it, because they really do need to get those experimental training classes done very early.
By the time they get the skill set
They're
down,
gone.
they're gone, and that's the problem with undergraduate research.
Yeah.
Period.
But I couldn't do what I do without their hands. I mean, there's no way if they weren't in it with me. And it's only, sadly, from my experience, it's usually only a handful of people. I mean, I have a laboratory and I can only supervise 3 or 4 students actually, because you know, I need to keep mine pretty focused.
We tried bringing them in sooner. We're trying to get them in the lab when they're sophomores as researchers, just because the lab skills they get in their coursework is not the same as research lab skills.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't fit as well. I don't know if other disciplines are like that. So we're trying to get them in as sophomores. They may not understand what they're doing for the first year, but they build up their skills to a point where the next year they're actually good at what they're doing.
Part of my problem with that is they do learn some of the data entry stuff in their experimental classes. But the other thing is I teach mostly senior level classes, and so I don't select students unless I know them from class, and that is part of my own personal trouble. I mean, that's I don't teach a lot of sophomore survey classes, so I don't get exposed to them early enough to bring them in sophomore, junior.
Yeah, recruiting's hard.
One of the things that I would like to do, and we've talked about it in my department a lot, is to try to identify students who are grad school track, who want to be professional historians, and cultivate them early. The problem is it's really hard to identify them, because it, again, just like with acquiring the skills, they don't know until they're juniors or seniors that they might want to go on to graduate school. A lot of the students we get in history, we have about 120 majors. They're in there by default. They've gone to some other major like chemistry and figured out they can't cut it, and so they end up in history, and they sometimes do very well. And my first student who went on to earn a PhD started out in math, but it's it's a tremendously rewarding thing once you do identify them, because that's when you can do the work. You can have them help with you with your own research. You can get them encyclopedia articles to write, start getting them little publications. But I wish there was a way to identify better, quicker.
Are you offering any incentives to the students who you're working with? I mean, are they officially taking it as a class? Or is it just that they will get a publication?
Well, it's usually like Michelle says, it's students I personally identify from being in class or whatever. Incentive, that's a good idea. I probably need to pursue that.
So when they're doing research, are they doing it as a history 490 course?
Well, we do have the 490 course, and that's when we hope they do
their magnum opus of sorts. But hopefully, I mean, we encourage immediately in the upper level classes. Immediately, we try to get them into doing research, thinking analytically, and I think it really is. It has the way it is. We identify on a personal level. I mean, David's class, he's a promising student. I will see one in my class. Across the board, we will look for those promising students and encourage them. And then you have some that, as sophomores, even they don't really have much of a concept. Many of them about graduate school, about what's going on. They're concerned. I mean, some of these kids are first-generation college students. I mean, the big goal for them is to get the degree, the BA degree. This graduate school, that's a fairly foreign idea to them. We have to start.
We have to do a lot of deprogramming too, because I think in history more than any other subject at college level, our students are taught by a coach somebody in high school. And so I mean, a lot of our students have a completely different idea of what they're getting into when they go into a history classroom. And we also have history education students. We don't control them; they're not our majors. We don't advise them, but we have to teach them. And so we have a complex situation, I think, when it comes to cultivating true historians at the undergraduate level. But we have, and I'm thrilled every time I see one go off to graduate school or get a teaching job. It's pretty exciting.
We started doing an open house in the spring. This is a 5-minute spiel from all of the professors. This is what we do. If you're interested in research, come talk to us. Cool. Mostly to help them figure out who they may want to work for, because they know they want to work for someone. But it's also brought in the occasional, oh, I never want to do research.
One of the things that we've been doing, these students that go to the national meetings and present posters, those posters end up on the walls. And initially, we only had 1 or 2 bulletin boards, but now if you walk through Brim, there are posters everywhere. And I just got back a couple weeks ago from a meeting that we had 5 students at. And one of them was one of these scholars where they were just there for a mentoring experience with a professional at one of the high big land grants. And then the 5 that made presentations. And so as I've been advising students this week, I've heard 2 or 3 times, oh, I heard about what you guys did. I want to, how do I get involved in something like that? How do I apply for that Golden Opportunity Scholar? So they are hearing it from each other, and then they see it around them. And that's really helped a lot.
The thing I've noticed since I've been at UT Martin is a change in attitude among the faculty. As we get more of a faculty turnover, there's been a lot of turnover since I started in 2001. There's much more emphasis on research as we get more PhDs and we attract more and more faculty who stay, we're in a position now here to do the kind of stuff that I don't think we did much of in the past. I know we didn't do particularly a lot of it in history, but with an influx of new younger faculty, I think it's made a huge difference, and we're seeing the benefits of that now.
Does anybody work with students in the summer, or do you have ways of working with students?
Try to.
Are they taking a class, like a course number to be able to?
We have to for liability for being in the laboratory, so they have to be registered for a class.
So they have to pay summer tuition?
And this past year, lottery would go towards summer tuition. That's not always been the case, Caroline, and it could change again next year because lottery regulations keep changing. But this past summer was the first summer that lottery could pay for summer school, even though the student had already taken fall and spring classes. So
A
it
lot
lied.
of them could, but Pell Grants didn't. So there was
Yeah.
you know, so it didn't, it's not like it. Summer school, I think, was hurt a lot for that. You know, our own summer school, everybody's was down.
Summer school presents a lot of challenges in terms of the upper division classes. You can't do a really good research paper in 5 weeks. So we usually offer an upper division option in the summer, maybe 2, but it's usually a film-based analysis or something like that to, frankly, to attract students. But I think summer, I think we could do internships or more hands-on stuff in the summer for the faculty who are around. I think that's an interesting idea.
No, one of the challenges for our department is the fact having the faculty around. That's the point. I know that the summer I am gone most of the time on research travel. That's the one time of the year that I can really devote myself to that. And I know there are other professors that fall into that camp. We also have professors that are around here, and I think the ones that are here on campus in town, that might be a better opportunity for their internships, working with the students. But I think that's one of the, coming back to talking about us as professors and doing our own scholarship, I find that that's really the key time of the year, is that period from May up until August to really make progress on my own research projects.
So your research is definitely separate than the research you do with students?
In most cases it is. It will overlap some, but 99% of it's going to be my own. Correct.
How many projects do you have going at a time?
Me personally,
Or as an example from your discipline?
well, what I usually, I have a number of journal articles. I have 2 in the works right now. 2 that have been accepted for publication, but that's been a year and a half, and they still undergo this whole series of revisions, this whole give and take. My long-term goal is to have these different articles. I'm trying to bridge them, bring them together for a monograph. But I find that if I feel like I do very well if I can complete one article per year.
And you also have a student that you're like working with at the same time?
Not with this project. I will work with students in their own research and their own interest, but not specifically on my project.
That's where we differ a lot from what
I think
in the sciences. It's very difficult for us to employ students on our research because most of our research is going to be in an archival collection somewhere far away, and we can't afford to take them with us, and there will be other improprieties involved there too.
But that raises a point that I can't afford.
Yes.
And that's something that is being addressed this year with the university scholars. They actually have research fund now that is going to be available to that group, and there's talk about a pot of money campus-wide for student research in general, not just the scholars pot. And I was going to mention that that's a big limitation for us, is money to do agronomic research. It costs money to bring cows in and whatever, or plant a field. And so finding the money is a big challenge everywhere.
This is a really good segue for a point I wanted to bring out, which may not be appropriate to this forum, but our research, you know, we're working with humans, paper, pencil usually. I mean, we test people's brain processing while they ride a bike, you know, or something like that's my research. And so it's the money that we put into our research is nil, basically. But what we could really benefit from in psychology is a little bit of money to pay our students for being our research assistant. Like, I'm working on a project with a student right now. She's been with me for 2.5 years, completely voluntary. She has had some national presentations come out of it. But I'm competing with Walmart because she's got to find a job. And then I lose my trained assistant to Walmart, you know, because she's only got so many hours in the day. She's taking the full load. She's doing graduate school applications, etc. But like the research grant that your office has is not helping my research because it's 25% of whatever, the $2,000 budget, let's say. I don't have any money to spend. Now, I could sit in my office and create things to spend money on, maybe, but what I would really be grateful for is a little tiny pot of money, flat set rate, that I could say, you're going to do research with me, you'll be paid $500 at the end of the semester, or whatever, you know, somehow figure it out some way. But our bread and butter is research, and the flour is the student, you know, and I can't do my research without them giving up their voluntary time. So I wish there was some way that we could find to employ our students, because in psychology, it's prestigious to be a paid research assistant, that you're not doing it just voluntarily, but you're actually paid because you've been trained for 2 years, 3 years to work with this professor. And so I wish there was some way we could get around that, because it would be a great help for my lab and I think other labs in my department.
And Walmart's an entirely different kind of psychology.
I've seen the pictures.
The learning that takes place is very different.
Yeah.
Well, on that point, and that is actually, they took that up in the committee 2 weeks ago. I think you're supposed to be getting a reply. I wasn't part of the reply being developed, but there is something coming out of that.
Well, and that's the difference between, like, your expenses in your laboratory are substantially different from mine.
Sure.
I mean, my research is really free. It's but the labor.
Yeah.
The labor is the big thing. You know, collating and stuffing and checking and entering. That's what I need is labor. And some of the times the students, they'll give it to you free, you know, just voluntary. That's what I did when I was an undergrad. But at some level, they've got to make a decision about how they're paying their rent that month, you know.
Especially for our demographic.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah,
with
exactly.
tuition going up,
Right.
what, 47% since.
Well, and that's this is one of the things that came up at Fall Faculty Workshop. Several folks asked the speakers pointedly about course load at the College of Charleston versus here, and that's something I've not heard y'all talk about is your course load. And Caroline, you may be Caroline, you may be trying to get that because you've asked everybody, do you put this into a class? Is it a part of a class and so forth? And y'all are looking at doing something innovative with chemistry, right? With that
We
zero.
teach research on overload. That got shut down.
Wait, say it again.
We teach on overload. If the research hours, I mean, if I were to count up how many hours I'm actually teaching with the research, I'm at 22 contact hours. So, I mean, I teach a classroom, you know, 12 to 15 is my goal. And then everything else, I have 5 research students this semester. It's all on top of that.
So honestly, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, I went with a small delegation to a research experience or
Council
something.
for Graduate Research.
There you go.
Kerr.
Yeah, Kerr. And
If any of y'all are not familiar with it, it's a wonderful website. It's the Council for Undergraduate Research, and they have information for all disciplines. And it's really, really helpful. Good stuff. Wish we could do more with it.
And there was something that Belmont did, of course, Belmont's not UT-Mart, but what they offered were positions called teaching postdocs. And I think that it would be amazing if UTM could even consider that in mathematics, we have so many classes that need to be covered. Ideally, we would like them covered by PhDs. It's not like this is Boston. It's not like there's extra PhDs just sitting around that we can call last minute and say, would you work 1 year? And so I think that for most recent graduates, coming to Martin as an instructor would not look good for their continued career development. If we were able to expand those instructor positions and make them something called teaching postdocs, it makes perfect sense for someone to come to a school like UT Martin for 1 or 2 years. They do a lot of intensive teaching. We possibly have a university-wide mentoring for all people who are here on teaching postdocs. It would lighten the load off of many professors. The students would still get, hopefully, excellent instruction in the classroom by these people. I think just the problem is drawing people to West Tennessee for a temporary position. And so if we gave it some structure and some, I was going to say,
Magic value.
Yeah.
Well, the teaching load, the course load is something that really has to be addressed if UT Martin is going to be serious about undergraduate research. We can't be expected to have our faculty teaching 12-hour loads or 15-hour loads and still conduct a lot of research or to do mentoring on the kind of level that it would require. And I know we've talked about it since I've been here, somehow reducing the teaching load, some creative formulas. I just don't see that happening. The economics don't support that happening. And so we're gonna either have to come up with creative course releases for the people who are doing it, load up on the people who aren't doing it, that sort of thing. And that way you get into sort of a haves and have-nots kind of situation, and that can be destructive of morale. So I think there's some challenges. I think we can do it. I just think there are some challenges to overcome. Speaking of which, I have to go.
You know, the teaching postdoc model, I don't know if that exists in other disciplines. It does exist in chemistry already.
There
But you
are.
have to take graduate level classes along with that.
So at Harvard, they have teaching postdocs that literally is like a regular postdoc, except instead of doing research or teaching. So it's people who already have a PhD.
Right, it is, but all the ones that I've seen, because I looked into applying for some, they also had a parallel track where you had to take a certain number
Like
of classes.
pedagogy. Well, I was thinking that this could be partnered with the education department in some way, or at least something campus-wide, and have it,
They have graduate level education classes, don't
do they?
I think so.
I have no idea on that. So either it could be something where the postdocs from around campus who are teaching postdocs could also do some sort of, I was thinking more just a seminar course,
Yeah.
have mentors, and I imagined this being, let's just say for math, suppose you had someone come in who was a teaching postdoc, and then it's a 2-year position, maybe they could extend it to 3 years if they couldn't get a job. We have a lot of math 140 classes, a lot of math 210, and now these 100 whatever classes. I would almost say this, that they have to teach the same classes every semester. And I was thinking things like, you know, the first semester they just have to do it. The second semester they have to implement technology in all their classes. The third semester they have to try and implement writing in all their classes, and so on. So there could be these different components that really does just show you're not our workhorse. We're actually trying to develop a skill set that you can take when you go somewhere else.
Or you give them a research objective that they could, you know, try some different variables and
Right.
test the effectiveness
Right.
educationally.
Try to run an entire class that's only group work
Yeah.
the whole semester. It's kind of like we're torturing them, maybe, but I don't know, it's possible. So that was the idea, but of course, what that means is we're paying them probably a good deal more than you are an instructor, and you're also paying them benefits. But the problem is you're,
I didn't make very much money when I was a postdoc fellow
No.
okay.
at Michigan. I mean,
So maybe it's not.
27,000. I know that the instructors are making more money than I made as a research postdoc fellow.
NIH and NSF standard rates are 40.
Yeah, I think that the anticipation for postdoc is even less than an instructor, at least in our field. I don't know.
Do you have any feeling on
Whatever
Because it's a
level,
stepping stone.
you know, I mean, you know, depends on what they're all over the place, I think,
Well,
to be honest.
Great.
but a lot of our at least a lot of our instructors, I think, that we have are people who are only doing, some of them are people who are high school who are only doing 1 or 2 courses then. And I don't know if we're trying to eliminate them.
No, we don't have any,
I don't really understand how things have changed with that recently.
lecture, you know, people classified as lecturers actually have 15-hour loads by default. I mean, that's just their.
It's a job description.
We could get around that adjunct loophole and count it 2 classes though.
One of the things that we addressed in our department, which may not work with what you're talking about, but when I talk about my research and their research, the distinction is that they come to me with a project that they need supervision on. And so they need some guidance on how to develop it and et cetera to help them take it to the next level. And Andrew McEwen teaches our Experimental 2 class. And of course, a lot of those projects coming out of Experimental 2 are ready to go on to the next step where the student can independently do that. I mean, they can do it with mentorship. And so she was bombarded with the students, like you're saying, you know, she got credit for each of them. And when I was serving as interim chair, the idea occurred to me to put that in load. And so that she's not, because she was doing it free. I mean, she was doing it voluntary, and she wasn't getting any, you know, she was getting a lot of students working with her. And so I wound up actually doing that this year. So we developed an advanced research methods class that goes from Experimental 1, Experimental 2, right into the 3rd one. And so now they'll get a teacher that's teaching, you know, basically those independent research, supervising all the independent research projects, which will probably result in at least a student presentation poster. But you know, when you look at how many, if you're supervising their research, you can only do that to a handful of students. Now, if they're working on my projects, that's different, but I have 3 projects going on right now, and pretty much at any point in time, I have 3 plates spinning. And I can't possibly take on too many of their projects to supervise because it's just not feasible with my time restrictions.
If we put it in loads, we need 3 more faculty to cover all of those reductions.
Well, we actually was split from, we had 110, 120 psychology, and we went to 101 pretty much because we were told to do that by the Board of Regents in the whole University of Tennessee system. But anyway, we went to a 1 semester intro psych class, which freed us up to now be able to do that kind of stuff. If that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be able to have shifted it.
Well, this is a subject change, but then you're the only one left, unfortunately. But what, you know, do y'all require for somebody to have tenure out of scholarly activity?
In psychology, because I'm in the Department of Behavioral Sciences now, and it is different for each discipline, so I'll just speak for psychology.
I guess that's what I was going to ask. So y'all actually have it it is kind of separate with, depending on what. So did y'all maintain what y'all were doing and the others maintain what they were doing,
Yeah.
sort of?
I mean, for psychology, it's basically a publication or a national presentation minimally a year. And I think people do try to shoot for a publication. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that kind of, yeah. But when it's time to have tenure, you know, you look back. What do they? Is it written? I'm thinking, there was some controversy over the campus. So just out of curiosity, how's it laid out? Where, you know?
Well, I was told directly by my chair that he said 1 per year. National presentation minimally, publication better. But I don't think it is written anywhere. But I haven't read our bylaws lately. It might be in the bylaw. I don't know.
Well, I know, that's what I meant, but
yeah,
you're in an unusual situation now that you didn't used to be in, but I just...
Well, people talk about research, teaching 60%, research 20%, and service 20%. And all the way down the pike, it's, to me, 60% teaching, 40% research, 40% service, because, I mean, it just has to come out of somewhere. You cannot get a project done, published, with 20% of your work time. It's impossible. So I've always looked at it as, that's to me a real understatement.
The expectations are very high for the amount of time
Yeah.
that we put
Yeah.
into it.
I think that's almost every department, but apparently some have
Yeah.
very little expectation. I mean,
Well, in psychology, I mean, it's different, like social work, they don't have any expectation for research. Theirs is really oriented towards service. I mean, really, I mean, they must do these certain service activities where they just don't do research. That's not part of their training, it's not part of their experience. Whereas psychology, it's basically everything. Because if you go on in psychology, you're going to do a thesis and a dissertation. And so if they don't do anything beyond that, they've got to be skilled when they leave here to do a thesis, pretty much.
must be interesting.
What's
For
that?
y'all, it must be interesting now then.
Why?
I said it must be, well, if you've got the different,
Oh.
or different groups and then
Yeah.
you've got to come together.
We're working
for a
together.
decision and-
It's worked out, actually, that we are, but you learn something every time you
Do y'all have a written one?
We don't, I don't believe we have one in
Think it's
writing.
written?
No, I think it's more of an understanding. I mean, when I came in, and I think it's been the same with the ones who've come since I arrived, is the three components is, you know, it's teaching, it's service, and it's scholarship. And I think the basic understanding is that scholarship, you know, I think there's that understanding that we are overworked in the other two areas, the service and especially the teaching. And so I think there's kind of that understanding that, you know, if you can do a presentation, I think there's that unwritten rule that you should have a presentation or a journal article each year. And, but that's perhaps not expecting too much. But we don't have anything written. You don't have to have a book,
Right.
perhaps, you know, after 3 years. But I would say there's definitely, you need to be reliable in your service. In our department, I think the idea is that you need to be very, very strong in two of those components, two of those areas. You need to really excel in service and scholarship, okay, service and teaching. But the one common denominator, though, is whatever two areas you are strong in, you need to be strong in teaching. That's very important in our department. I think that was made clear to me, and I think it has been to the others. So you can be strong in teaching and scholarship or teaching and service, but teaching needs to be, I think, where you really stand out. I did that for you. They call him numerator. That's a
Any
So-
other thoughts?
I do. I just assume you're taking these notes to Og because he was interested.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that, yeah. I will.
So I think that the teaching postdocs, first, most departments are always trying to hire, at least, I guess, maybe I don't know that, I just think about our department. I think that it seems we always seem to have a position available.
I think that would be true of the departments that have to teach the classes in the Gen A curriculum.
Okay, so, I mean, I think that these teaching postdocs wouldn't necessarily mean go and find more money somewhere. It might mean one of these positions becomes a postdoc position. So you constantly have a new set of energy coming in every few years. You're cheaper than keep letting that person go on to tenure. So I think that financially it would make more sense for the university. It's just adding some prestige to this position so that we have a reason for these national candidates to really come to Martin. I think that people look at Martin and they might, you know, especially if they were there. We can get people who have been and living in the area, lived in the area. But for people to come from all other parts of the country and consider Martin as a permanent position, they hem and haw and aren't certain. But if it's only a couple of years, if it's only a 2-year position, and they leave from it being able to say, you know, here's how my teaching has improved, I think that we could get a pretty interesting pool of candidates that would continue help bring diversity to the campus.
One thing I like about that is the idea of keeping a fresh person coming along every 3 years. I think that's very important, and especially in a place like West Tennessee. We can hire adjuncts, we can hire instructors perhaps who are from the West Tennessee area. But it is, I think it's like you're saying, it's not an easy hire to bring someone outside of who's not to be here for 1 or 2 years, unless there's some kind of prestige brought to the position. So we've got to make it worth their while.
I think we have people not considering even tenure track positions because they're not certain about permanently relocating here.
I would disagree. We've
It's
had
only
3
two.
searches in the past year. We've had more than 80 applicants for all of them and had outstanding people.
In terms of the tenure track positions?
Mhm.
And now, how long have they been here now?
2 of them started last year, and one we just are making an offer to, but it would start next year.
We have problems keeping people in our, yes.
Or, I don't know about your department, but we also, have instructors, I assume, and I know English does, some of the more I guess I don't really consider you guys a service department, but maybe you are at some level.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that the service departments tend to need more bodies.
Yeah, that's where.
But we never receive permission to hire anybody in any semblance of permanency for some of those, ever. I mean, we never have, that I can remember. But everybody's always afraid you're gonna not need them next year, or you're going to, so we always have lecturers now. But what we can't do is run through some West Tennessee group and obtain those people. Anybody we have that's comes in from somewhere, anybody that we have. So, there is no local person to hire that is just sitting around waiting to teach 15 hours of math. They have to come from Texas, or, they have to come from...
I guess, Chair, do you think that if there were funding set aside, do you think this position would work in that?
I think, if we get the money, well, you know how we do it. If we get the money, we can hire somebody for tenure track that has a reasonable chance of staying. If we can get the money, but we just, we don't get the money.
But we still have those tenure track positions, but don't we often have these instructor positions where we're looking for people? And
Lecturer positions.
And if...
Our hold up on that is we don't get the money immediately. We think there's a need, we're getting off the thing, but we think there's a need that we're gonna need somebody next year, but often it's like, well, let's see the classes fill up first. Oh yeah, you do have 5 sections that are full in June, so yeah, we didn't recruit those people because there wasn't a real position there until June. We had to show that they were full.
I'll bet you for our college, NSF would have a grant that would cover this kind of thing that you could apply for an innovative program for STEM.
So what you're saying is, we could, I think, if we, right now, if we could, let's just say that we felt like there was an opportunity to hire somebody for 2 years right now, then we could probably identify somebody. But most of the time, it's like, well, we don't want to take a chance that one of those classes might only be half full. We've got to see them loaded. Then we'll give you the position. It's been that way for years.
But it also isn't just, what I would hope this would turn to isn't merely covering extra sections. It would be for someone like Stumpo, who's technically has 22 contact hours, that can go down in the other teaching requirements, since she's doing research with students.
But that could be done anyway. All you have to do is say, math, you're a pretty big department. We'll give you an extra position, and each year you can designate 3 or 4 people to only teach 9 hours. So, I'm just saying, you've got, 6 faculty, we'll give you 7, and you can designate 4 to have 9 hours each year. You can rotate it around however you want to do it. If the chair isn't able to rotate it, but keeps giving it to the same ones all the time, then the rest of the department can rise up and, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's not being done fairly, but that would, since you're not going to let everybody have it, I don't know how many people you have to have, just however, have a position or 2 of them in the college, rotate them around the college, You can, if you're going to have what you're talking about for, say, 2-year appointments, then, anything that's a relief, rotate it around the whole college, Like give the whole college 2 positions, you got 4 departments each, that way. History can have it this year and somebody else next year, and of course, we would argue we should always have one because we're a big department, compared to the others.
Did you break that down?
I'm just saying. There are lots of stuff you could be doing that way that would give people some relief for I think that would be a good thing for our younger.
Our college has that. I'm on I don't actually know technically the name of it, but I've had a course release for 2 years. And it's to do research. I mean, it's basically money, a little pot of money in our college that pays an adjunct to cover my intro psych class. And so, I mean, it's been really, really amazing to have that little break. It's kind of shocking how much just one course.
But see, that's where she knows that we have a problem of it. We've had lots of opportunities, perhaps, if we pushed it, if somebody would give us that money to pay an adjunct, but there are no math adjuncts sitting around ready to come in.
Well, these are lecturers, actually, they're teaching it as an overload. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, like Brian Johnson picked up my class as an overload.
Does Memphis have a math PhD program?
This one?
Does Memphis, University of Memphis? I don't know if you did.
Yes, we've never seen someone there, but they do.
I meant for an adjunct.
Oh,
Like a recent graduate.
Yeah, you know, I mean, well, you mean for not just an adjunct, but for a,
Or for an instructor.
you can't come to Martin as an adjunct from Memphis. I mean, maybe as a lecturer. We can hire a lecturer if we just have enough time ahead, you know, we just have enough, time.
We'll go ahead and conclude. I will put some notes together and share these with Dr. Ogg, and I have been recording this. I don't think anybody said anything that needs to be edited, so thank you for that. But I will ask the folks at ITC to help me compress it, and we'll get it online, and I'll send that link out to your colleagues if anybody had questions or if you want to share this with me. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Fine page. There you go. There you go.
Is Patty in her office today?
Viral.
I was going to ask her an IRB question. I'll just give her a call next week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a big deal, I don't think. It's just a technicality on an IRB that she approved. So, all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you later.